We're coming down to the finale. Are any of the routes from Stay Night deadlier than Apocrypha? Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. This is the final part of my dead meat kill count inspired fate count. We're here to determine whether or not the 5th Holy Grail War of Stay Night is in any way deadlier than the Great Holy Grail War of Apocrypha at 1,265 kills, or the 4th Holy Grail War of Zero with 675 kills. As usual, we're counting humans, homunculi, and servants, while excluding animals, phantasmal beasts, or any part of a servant's noble phantasm that cannot manifest independently for an extra life. Stay Night, of course, is going to be trickier because of the 3 different plot routes involved. As such, we'll be going through each of those routes and determining a separate count for each. That said, there are some kills that occur in all 3 routes, so let's start with those. Unlike Fate Zero, Stay Night has a lot of kills that happen before the war even begins. The first I'd like to note is the presumed demise of Bazette Fraga McRemitz. Unfortunately, Kirei Kotomine didn't want any association interference and tricked her. He befriended her, only to then betray her. He lopped off her arm, stealing her command spells and servant. Turns out, though, she's not really dead. Rather, the Grail is keeping her alive. That said, she was murdered, and without the Grail's help, she'd have died for sure. As such, I'll be counting this as a resurrection. And would you know it, I forgot to count Shiro last video. Consider him bundled in with the 500 casualties of the fire. That said, he definitely would have died without Avalon, and this moment is critical to Shiro's involvement with the 5th War. Let's give him an honor kill. That also segues into the next batch of deaths, the Orphans. Yes, when Shiro decided to accept Kiritsugu as his adoptive father, he escaped the poor fate of being a mana battery for Gilgamesh. In an effort to preserve Gilga's form over the 10-year gap from Zero to now, Kirei abducted all the orphans Shiro had met at the hospital and kept them hidden in the church basement, where their nutrition, mana, and very souls were sapped into Gilgabunny. Ironically, the wiki says this wasn't even necessary with Gilgamesh's incarnation. Oof. Now, you might say these kids are still alive, and they are, but just barely. I wouldn't really consider this living, as they have no hope of recovery. But just how many orphans were there? I dug through my archives of the visual novel and was never able to find an actual number. These are all kids Shiro somehow recognizes from his time in the hospital, and we see that hospital in the anime, but there's no guarantee all the kids conveniently fit into one room or ward. We do know, however, that there are at least as many kids as there are coffins to sap strength from them. The novel describes the remains of them scattered on the walls and floor, so sadly this is only going to be our best guess estimate. I took the official CG of the basement and brightened it up. On the left, we've got 6 coffins, which I assume are mirrored on the right. The depiction in Dean Stay Night appears to reflect this, which makes 12 essentially dead children. Next in our set of prerequisite kills are the Einsburn homunculi. After effectively being betrayed by Kiritsugu in the previous war, Yubstahite wanted to ensure one of the family's homunculi could become the next master/lesser grail. Ilia was their top candidate. But even during the gap between wars, the Einsburn continued to experiment on and improve her. They cut into her in an attempt to expand her magic crest, and even tossed her to the wolves. What the Unlimited Bladeworks anime shows us that not even the visual novel does, are the homunculi created and scrapped as other potential candidates. Only 2 of these experimental homunculi survive, Sela and Lisret, and only then because they could be of assistance to Ilia. So we see a big ol' room full of dumped bodies. My best job at counting them yields 77 submerged in the water from 2 shots, and 4 that are sticking out of the water with battle damage. So that's 81 unfortunate souls tossed out for the Grail. Next is Medea's former master, Atram Galiasta. Despite having quite possibly the sexiest harem in existence at his beck and call, the guy's a pompous asshole. He treats Medea like crap, then gets upset when she, a mage from the Age of Gods, shows him up in magecraft. It's pathetic. Every time he wants to make so much as a damn crystal, he has to sacrifice 8 people. His first demonstration shows those 8 get killed, then cuts to reveal the entire stockpile of sacrifices he has lined up in his workshop. I count 42 hanging in the darkness in one shot, but another reveals a brightly lit top room with at least 6 more. Thankfully, all of these poor subjects are let free when Medea torches the place. Good for them, bad for our list. Though she does kill Atram and his 2 attendants clearly in frame. Bye-bye, bastard. That about does it for prerequisites. It's time to dive into the start of the 5th Holy Grail Wars it's told to us. Thankfully, not a lot happens until the routes diverge. In fact, one of the only common kills is Shiro himself. How fitting. Ku shanks him with the gay bolg, and he only survives because of Reen's resurrection. Another weird one is a point in the story where, on a news report, a family of 4 is attacked by someone wielding a short blade, killing 3 folks. This essentially happens in all 3 routes, whether it's shown or not. The culprit is never officially revealed, but we do know that Ku, Medusa, and Medea are all sapping mana from the city's residents. To that point, there had only been people losing consciousness, but this is clearly a murder. So all routes will start at this point with 110 kills. Moving into the Fate route, the next death is Shiro, again! Dude gets his intestines blown out by Heracles' sword. Gross! Admittedly, the Fate route is the most tame. Even when Medusa activates her blood fort on the school, nobody is actually killed until the servant battle. Artoria slays Medusa with her Excalibur. Shortly after, Shinji's grimoire burns away, and he flees like a pansy, running right into Ilia's trap. He gets murdered on his way down the skyscraper. Shiro gets kidnapped by Ilia, but is rescued when Artoria, Reen, and Archer come to his rescue. To escape, however, they've got to get past Heracles. Archer lets the group escape, taking on the Herc by himself. Fun thing about Herc is that, like a cat, he's got multiple lives, 12 specifically. Archer, in his last stand, takes out 4 of them. Of course, this takes all of Archer's strength. He dies protecting Reen from the threat. After a phenomenal threesome to replenish Saber's low stock of mana, Shiro, Artoria, and Reen prepare to face Heracles head-on. Reen launches a surprise attack on Herc's face, which blows his head away, taking another life. Shiro finally figures out his specialty, tracing magecraft, and reproduces a replica of Caliburn. This sort of selection in Artoria's hands proves powerful enough to strike Heracles and deplete his remaining 7 lives. Dean Stay Night takes some creative liberties here, but the deaths mostly remain the same. Medea attacks the Emiya household at night with her Dragon Tooth warriors. Their party gets shut down when Gilgamesh shows up and slays Medea in a rain of swords. Hollow Ataraxia clarifies that Gilgamesh then goes on to murder Kojiro Sasaki and Kuzuki at Ryudo Temple. Dean's adaptation just has all 3 of them die in the same place. Gilgamesh, coming to claim Artoria for himself, first punches a hole through Shiro's heart. Hooray for Avalon! After seeing how horribly Gilga batters Artoria, Shiro stands up again, only to get sliced through, leaving his upper half a dangling flap of flesh. After a romantic night of mana transfer, Shiro goes to consult Kirei about how to preserve Artoria with the Grail. Except, he stumbles onto the basement where the orphans are being kept. He gets stabbed, but it's just enough to weaken him. Instead, Ku finds out that Kirei's been two-timing him with Gilga. He fights back, but is slayed when Gilga wraps him in the chains of heaven and shanks him. They killed Lancer! Those bastards! The next kills are a double feature. In the final battle, Artoria slays Gilgamesh with a point-blank strike from Excalibur, while Shiro pumps a decade's worth of mana into Kirei's Black Heart, courtesy of Reen and the Azoth Dagger. Double kill. Here, Artoria truly resolves her arc and realizes that she should no longer regret her previous life. She disappears after declaring her love for Shiro. That said, Artoria is a weird case. Unlike other servants, she never technically died in life. Rather, on her deathbed, she wagered her afterlife in Avalon for the chance to pursue the Grail as a heroic spirit. By finding satisfaction, the deal is done, and she is finally able to die for real. In honor of our lovely King of Knights. I'm counting this. The total kill count for the Fate route is 136. Quite a bit more pleasant in comparison to other wars. Onward to Unlimited Blade Works, with the count back to 110. This time, the first fight with Heracles goes a bit different. Artoria manages to claim one of his lives by blasting his face off. Archer launches Calidbolg at Heracles. This doesn't take any of his lives. Shiro avoids the blast zone, but nonetheless gets injured by shrapnel, causing him to pass out. I won't count this as a death either, since it appears he would have survived without Avalon. He just wouldn't have healed so quickly. What he couldn't heal from, however, was the brutal assault he receives from Archer at Ryudo Temple. Avalon saves his butt. This time, when Medusa activates her blood fort, Medea decides to crash the party and kill her in cold blood. Turns her friggin' neck into a carousel. Totally unfair. We go a bunch of episodes casualty-free, until Medea manages to steal Artoria and forces her to stab Shiro. Yet another Avalon save. They psych us out, making it seem like Kirei dies, but we know better. Why? Because Gilgamesh is still around. He decides to intrude on the Einsburn mansion and promptly kills Lizrit and Sela, both in totally brutal, undeserved ways. Gilgamesh doesn't care for homunculi much. He proceeds to fight and destroy all the remaining lives of Heracles like it was nothing. That's 11 more to the count. Worst of all, the bastard gets the bright idea to slice Ilia's eyes open and rips out her heart, all for utility's sake. Archer sure loved betraying folks. He takes advantage of Medea and Kuzuki's vulnerability to run them through with a rain of swords. 2 birds, 1 stone. That is, if 1 stone is the same as a shit ton of flying blades. In the attic of the Einsburn mansion, Ku and Kirei have a scuffle, and Kirei decides he has no more use for his doggo. With a command spell, Kirei orders Ku to run himself through with the gay Bolg. This doesn't kill Ku immediately, but it sure as hell spells his eventual demise. Before he kicks the bucket, though, he decides to take Kirei down with him. Boom! Satisfying stabby stab. Now, this part has always been weird. Despite being stabbed by Shiro at the end of their bout, and taking a load of swords to the friggin' spine, Archer somehow survives to the end, acting from the shadows due to his independent action skill. Dude's quite stubborn. Also, despite being turned into an amorphous grail blob, Shinji doesn't die here either. Instead, the next death is when Artoria defeats Kojiro Sasaki in a duel to the death. Artoria, seeing the grail for the threat it is, uses the last of her mana to destroy it with Excalibur. Of course, I'm going off the true ending. Thankfully, by watching Shiro struggle with his ideals, Artoria realizes her own mistakes, finding satisfaction in a roundabout way from in the Fate route. Thus, when she vanishes, it's assumed that she also dies after Camlon. That makes 2. With the combined efforts of Shiro defeating him in battle, and Archer sniping him in the forehead, Gilgamesh dies, being sucked into the Grail's void. On the hill behind Ryudo Temple, Archer bids farewell to Rin, finally dispersing. Wow, would you believe that? Unlimited Blade Works only managed to beat out the Fate route by a single kill. Well, I can guarantee that won't happen for Heaven's Feel. Let's restart the count and begin again. There's a bit of overlap here, as Heaven's Feel Shiro once again takes a direct hit from Heracles and loses his innards. Would you take a hit like that for Saber? Artoria pwns Medusa in an alleyway. She's kind of a strange case, too. Whenever Shinji takes control of Medusa, it's almost like she's made into a separate instance. To highlight Shinji's incompetence, I'm counting this. Soken decides he wants a piece of the action, and summons Hassan of the Cursed Arm straight from the body of Kojiro Sasaki. He gets an alien death. He should be proud. First thing Hassan decides to do with his freedom is slaughter both Kuzuki and Medea like they were nothing. To the best of my knowledge, the next kill is once again Ku. After having his pecs caressed and his heart smashed, he dies and is devoured by Sakura's shadow. Emiya gets a clean kill on Zoken, dispersing him into a hive of insects. We know that after these cases he has to go secure a new body, so I'm counting it. When Artoria is turned altar by the shadow, I'm not counting that as a kill. She doesn't die. It's the same Artoria, just being converted. At school though, Shinji takes Sakura hostage and has Medusa beat the crap out of Shiro. She's killed when Emiya busts in through the window. I'm treating this as another life. When Sakura goes out of control, Shiro saves Rin from being stabbed, incurring another otherwise fatal injury. Almost to make a point, Zoken lets his body decompose and then reform anew. I'm counting that shit. Saber Alter fights Heracles and kills him with the Shadow's assistance. She then dices him up and sets him ablaze. She torches him yet again. Heracles dies one more time from a point-blank strike from Excalibur Morgan, reducing him to a mutilated husk. Emiya does his best to save everyone from the Shadow's explosion, but Shiro still winds up armless on the verge of death. A life for a life, Emiya lops off his own arm to save Shiro, again treating it like a resurrection. Either way, Archer's gone. While it seems like Sakura's safe and contained, banging Shiro in wholesome lovemaking by night, she's clearly escaping off as the Shadow to cause havoc on the streets of the Shinto district. One news report notes several corpses found by police. The nifty signs go as high as 15. Sakura's Wonderland Dream features 4 bizarre plush creatures, who, if you read the visual novel, compare to the 4 thugs that try to hit on her one night. Through them, she finds a fixation for consuming people, so that's another 4. According to what Rin later says, Sakura is murdered here in the alleyway by Gilgamesh. It's gruesome. Of course, by tapping into her Grail power, she's able to resurrect and take revenge, nomming Gilga starting with his leg. Om nom nom nom. And here we are, the one factor that many of us consider to be the most deadly part of Stay Night. It's when Sakura expands the Shadow and consumes a whole section of Shinto. Strangely, this is an anime-only edition and is poorly documented. The best we get is an overhead shot showing the containment area of the Shadow. Another shot shows a girl and her male companion walking down the street. Only the one guy vanishes, leading me to believe that girl was standing just outside the area. She's quite lucky. It appears that all living things inside the Shadow, including the fish, suffer a swift and horrifying end. On TV, a news anchor mentions that over 60 victims have already been confirmed, and the residents of roughly 40 buildings are unaccounted for. I don't know about you. To me, that seems like a very, very small number. This puts us at a crossroads, where unfortunately there's no definitive correct answer until Nasu or another creator specifies with more detail. Do we stick with the conservative 60, which implies that not everyone in the Shadow necessarily gets consumed? Or do we try and figure out the population of that region? For entertainment, of course, I'll be doing both. For this count, I'll be using the larger estimate, but the real truth will always be up for debate. Turns out, we can utilize a number of tricks to get a better estimate. We get one shot that shows just how far the Shadow reaches. By superimposing the before and after, we can accurately map out the damage zone. Hollow Ataraxia's official art gives us a full overview of the city. At first, I tried to figure out if Ufotable drew the city according to that map, but it's too stylized to note any specific landmarks. However, at the start of Lost Butterfly, Shiro looks at another map of Fuyuki and traces it all the way to Ryudo Temple. It's a panning shot, so I had to patch it all together. Then I compared it to the Shadow pick. Still didn't see a correlation, so I brightened the image, and then saw a large forested section. Shinto has a park. It's where Shiro almost rested in Artoria's lap. Then I noticed a trio of buildings in the upper left, and by God, these 3 buildings match up perfectly to the Shadow map. Turns out Ufotable used the same general map of the city in both shots. So now I have a containment area that's to scale on a map that stretches all across the city. Unfortunately, the entire city map doesn't correctly scale to uffotables, so we're gonna have to estimate. I used the size of the park, the distance to the bridge, and the curvature of the train tracks to position a best guess placement for the city piece. Redrawing the outline of the containment area gives us a very approximated view of just how much of the city got gobbled up. With a completed map, I was able to lay out a grid and calculate the area of all of Fuyuki's buildings and residential areas, and compared them to that of the containment area. This lets us calculate that the containment area covers just 5.26% of all of Fuyuki's populated areas. Now all we need is the actual population of Fuyuki. While this is a fictional city, its closest real-world equivalent is Kobe. The Grail War takes place in 2004, and Kobe's population that year was 1.519 million. Doing the math gives us a figure of 80,000 people. But Fuyuki's not that big. It just can't be. According to lore, it takes Shiro an hour on foot to walk from his house all the way across the city to the church, which includes crossing over Fuyuki Bridge. If you plot a similar excursion from one side of Kobe to the other, crossing over the same bridge Fuyuki's is based on, it would take around 9 times as long to make the journey. So I'm gonna scale back our population estimate to be more reasonable. Assuming we took Kobe and made it a city 1/9 its size, we'd be looking at an estimated 9,000 people residing within Sakura's containment area. As such, I'll be calling this the Kobe estimate. A fire's one thing. People can actually escape that. A massive instantaneous consumption that grabs everything in a certain radius in the more densely packed urban sprawl? There ain't no mercy in that. Perhaps the most deserved kill in this entire video is when Sakura takes revenge on Shinji, finally standing up for herself. All it takes is a swift lash to the neck. Ding dong, the wicked dick is dead. Forgive me for a lack of direct footage for the remainder of Heaven's Feel, since the final film has yet to be released at the time of this video. During the mission to rescue Ilya from her mansion, Kirei scores another kill on Zoken, this time presumably destroying his ability to reincarnate. Then there's everyone's favorite Heaven's Feel moment, when Shiro slays all of Herc's remaining lives with 9 lives Blade Works. Assuming we're still going off of the 12 lives Saber Alter chipped away at, it means 8 more kills. As long as one fully dead Zerker amounts to 12 total kills, I won't worry about where they're dispersed. In the depths of Mount Enzo, Dark Sakura crushes Hassan almost instantaneously, refusing to form a new contract with him. Sakura yanks out the crestworm clinging to her heart, which is where Zoken's truly been all this time. She squishes him like the filthy bug he is. Medusa and Shiro team up to defeat Saber Alter. In order to put Artoria out of her misery, Shiro pierces her heart. Rin takes what I would consider to be a fatal stab wound in order to embrace Sakura. This is another one of those resurrection situations thanks to her magic crest. Kirei stands as Shiro's final opponent. The two of them beat each other to a pulp, Dragon Ball style, but Shiro manages to land the final blow. Shiro isn't making it out of this battle alive, however. Technically speaking, he dies soon after. But do people really die if they are killed? Ilya sure doesn't think so. Donning the dress of heaven, she sacrifices herself in order to materialize his soul, long enough for Rin to transfer it into a new body. Nice move, Ilya. You will be missed. That does it for the true ending of Heaven's Feel, which definitely takes the cake for the Deadliest Grail War we have full animated access to. We can thank Japan's population density for that, because even if we assumed Fuyuki were less than half the size I estimated, it'd still be populated enough to take the top spot. That's assuming we go with my Kobe estimate. Without it, that count is way smaller, at a total of 224. Just know I really gave it my all to provide the 2 options for you. Now it's time to list the best and worst kills Stay Night has to offer. My favorite is definitely when Sakura kills off Shinji. It's not the most badass or anything, it's just the most relieving. My least favorite has gotta be Artoria Alter's death, because we all know she's not that evil. At least when you make her a maid. Before we wrap things up, there's one other Grail War I want to address, since you guys brought it up in the comments. That would be the Mooncell Holy Grail War of Fate Extra. Since it doesn't have a vanilla anime of the war itself, I won't do the count, but it's actually really easy to figure out how many people die, especially if we don't count NPCs that haven't gained a sense of self. The Mooncell War has 999 participating masters, and 999 servants to fight for them. Throughout the war, either Reen or Rani get saved from dying, and survive through the end. Twice H. Beastman and Saver are from a previous war, but meet their end in this one. Then Hakuno is deleted in the Mooncell core, but not before returning to their real body on Earth. Conveniently, that makes for a clean total of 2,000 dead masters and servants. As such, the result of our kill counts are as follows. The least deadly of the Grail Wars happens to be the 5th war from the Fate route at 136 kills. After that, we have Unlimited Blade Works at 137. Then there's the 4th Holy Grail War at 675. Next is the Great Holy Grail War of Apocrypha at 1,265. While we didn't officially count them, the Mooncell Holy Grail War falls in at 2,000 kills even. And in first place, we've got Heaven's Feel at a whopping 9,164 kills. The only way it could have lost is if we ignored the big gobble from the movie and go with a more conservative estimate, or we decided to count the 20,000 soldiers of the Ionian Hetairoi. This was a total blast to create, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'd love to see all 3 of these parts go viral, and you can help that by giving these videos a like and commenting your best and worst kills in each. Oh, and of course, share it with your friends. Those small gestures go a long way. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon, or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.